Namaskar. A warm welcome to World News and Indian Perspective on All India Radio. This is Renuka and with me is Saira Mustafa, bringing glimpses of the major developments of the day from across the globe. Over the next half an hour, we shall bring to you the latest from the world of politics, economy, sports, entertainment and more. The headlines. Prime Minister Narendra Modi says India has potential to become a manufacturing hub for the world. India-Australia Economic Cooperation and Trade Agreement passed by Australian Parliament. Prime Minister Modi says it will strengthen comprehensive strategic partnership. Defence Minister Rajnath Singh co-chairs made an India-ASEAN Defence Ministers meeting in Cambodia. In Indonesia, death toll rises to 268 in Monday's earthquake at the main island of Java. In cricket, India win 3-match T20 series against New Zealand 1-0 after the rain interrupted final game ends in tie. And at FIFA World Cup in Qatar, Saudi Arabia stuns Argentina 2-1 in historic upset in their opening game. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi has said the country has the potential to become a manufacturing hub of the world. On India's efforts to become a developed country in the coming decades, he said experts around the world are optimistic about the country's growth trajectory.
भारत आज सर्विस एक्सपोर्ट के मामले में विश्व की एक बड़ी शक्ति बन गया है। अब एक्सपर्ट्स भरोसा जता रहे हैं कि भारत विश्व का मैन्युफैक्चरिंग हाउस भी बनने वाला है। इसमें हमारी प्रोडक्शन लिंक इंसेंटिव स्कीम ऐसी योजनाओं की बड़ी भूमिका होगी, लेकिन इसका मुख्य आधार भारत का स्किल्ड युवा ही होगा। मेक इन इंडिया अभियान हो, वोकल फॉर लोकल हो, लोकल को ग्लोबल ले जाने का अभियान हो, ये सभी योजनाएं देश में रोजगार और स्वरोजगार के नए अवसर बना रही हैं।
Mr. Modi was speaking after distributing over 71,000 appointment letters to newly inducted recruits through video conferencing at 45 locations across the country on Tuesday. Addressing the new appointees, the Prime Minister said the government is working in mission mode to provide government jobs. He said several Rozgar Melas have been organized at various states and this campaign will continue in the future. Mr. Modi said a centre is giving top priority to young talent for nation building. Prime Minister Narendra Modi thanked Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese as Australia-India Economic Cooperation and Trade Agreement passed through the Australian Parliament on Tuesday. In his message, Mr. Modi said the agreement will strengthen the India-Australia Comprehensive Strategic Partnership and will be greatly welcomed by Indian and Australian business communities. Commerce and Industry Minister Piyush Goyal also termed the passage of implementing legislation of Australia-India Economic Cooperation and Trade Agreement in Australian Parliament as a significant moment for bilateral ties. Briefing media in New Delhi, Mr. Goyal said the move is a big recognition of India's growing global stature.
With not even any restriction on quota, unlimited restriction of 100% is the first time Australia has done for any country. It reflects the confidence and trust between the two countries. It reflects the strong bonds that Prime Minister Narendra Modi has built with the government in Australia and is a big recognition of India's growing stature and our capabilities that our businesses provide to the world, both in goods and in services.
The minister said Indian IT industry, students and many labour-intensive sectors will soon reap the benefits of this landmark deal. Mr. Goyal further stated that the agreement opens up significant new opportunities across sectors for Indian businesses. He added that India's textiles and gem and jewellery sectors have been keenly waiting for the agreement to be able to sell to high-income earners in Australia. He also said that the agreement gives the Indian pharma industry a big boost and medicines which have gone through rigorous approval process by US and UK will now have fast-track mechanism to get approval in the Australian regulatory system.
The maiden India-ASEAN Defence Ministers meeting was held on Tuesday at Siem Reap in Cambodia to commemorate the 30th anniversary of India-ASEAN relations in 2022. This year has been designated as India-ASEAN Friendship Year. The meeting was co-chaired by Defence Minister Rajnath Singh and Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of National Defence of Cambodia, General T. Bom. In a series of tweets, Mr. Singh said, India shares historic, robust and comprehensive strategic partnership with ASEAN. He said India deeply values the engagement with the ASEAN multilateral platforms such as ASEAN Defence Ministers Plus meeting and East Asia Summit. The Defence Minister is on a 2-day official visit to Cambodia. Mr. Singh held bilateral talks with U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin on the sidelines of the meeting. Both the ministers discussed a wide range of issues of mutual interest while expressing their commitment to a strong India-U.S. defense cooperation. Mr. Singh emphasized the need for working together by both the countries for capability building in military aviation, artificial intelligence, cyber technology and other critical domains. He looked forward to building a roadmap towards greater defense industrial collaboration between India and the U.S. Mr. Singh highlighted India's growing expertise in aircraft maintenance, repair and overhaul and shipbuilding repairs and refits. He suggested specific areas where U.S. defense companies can look for technology cooperation and manufacturing opportunities with Indian partners in India. Secretary Austin welcomed the suggestions and assured him of cooperation in this regard. Both the leaders also shared their perspectives on the regional security situation. The Defence Minister also interacted with Australia's Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for Defence, Richard Marles, at Siem Reap. Both sides held deliberations on boosting defence ties and deepening cooperation between the two countries. Cambodia, as the chair of ASEAN Defence Ministers Plus meeting, is hosting the 9th annual meeting at Siem Reap. Defence Minister Rajnath Singh will address the forum on Wednesday. The 4th edition of Indo-Pacific Regional Dialogue will be held in New Delhi from Wednesday till the 25th of November. Indo-Pacific Regional Dialogue (IPRD) is an apex-level international annual conference of Indian Navy. The National Maritime Foundation is Navy's knowledge partner and chief organizer of each edition of the event. The theme of IPRD 2022 is Operationalizing the Indo-Pacific Oceans Initiative. It will have 6 professional sessions spread over the 3-day period. As part of the event, globally renowned speakers and eminent panelists will explore how the areas of maritime cooperation could be optimally and inclusively operationalized.
India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar met his UAE counterpart Sheikh Abdullah bin Zayed Al Nahyan in New Delhi on Tuesday. They reviewed the continuous progress in bilateral relations across different domains since the 14th Joint Commission meeting held by them in September this year. They appreciated the progress in bilateral relationship, especially in trade, investment, consular matters, education and food security. Both the ministers noted that bilateral trade has shown appreciable growth under the Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, which came into force on May this year. Both the ministers also exchanged views on the global situation and various regional hotspots, as well as the cooperation between the two countries in UN Security Council. The meeting was also attended by Foreign Secretary Vinay Quatra and UAE Minister of State for International Cooperation, Reem Al-Hashimi. The 9th India-EU Foreign Policy Security Consultations were held in New Delhi on Tuesday. During the consultations, both sides were pleased to note the enhanced intensity and political momentum in the India-EU relationship. They took stock of key bilateral developments, including the India-EU Trade and Technology Council, announced by Prime Minister Narendra Modi and President of the European Commission Ursula von der Leyen in April this year. They also welcomed the progress in negotiations on the India-EU trade and investment agreements in line with the decision taken during the leaders' meeting in May last year. They expressed hope on the timely conclusion of negotiations, 2 rounds of which have already been concluded. They agreed on the need for greater ambition in the implementation of the India-EU Connectivity Partnership. The two sides also reviewed the working of various institutional mechanisms between India and the EU, including on cyber security, counterterrorism and maritime security. The two sides exchanged views on regional and global issues of mutual interest and agreed to work closely towards the next India-EU summit. The consultations were co-chaired by Secretary West in External Affairs Ministry Sanjay Verma and Deputy Secretary General for Political Affairs, European External Action Service, Enrique Mora.
In today's Hotspot section, we bring you a news commentary on Loss and Damage Fund, a major breakthrough at COP27, edited by AIR Foreign Affairs Editor Dr. Atul Kumar Tiwari.
The 27th UN Conference of Parties has agreed to set up a special loss and damage fund. The fund will help to make up for the losses suffered by developing nations that are vulnerable to climate change. It is also being seen as a warning to the developed nations that they cannot get away from climate destruction. Confirming the decision in a tweet, the COP27 posted that history was made at Sharm el-Sheikh as parties agreed to establish a long-awaited loss and damage fund for assisting developing nations that are particularly vulnerable to the adverse effects of climate change. The decision was taken at a plenary session of the participating nations at Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt on Sunday after late-night huddles. A transitional committee will make recommendations for the countries to identify and expand the sources of funding which would come up for adoption at COP28 next year in November. The delegates at the COP27 applauded after the loss and damage fund was adopted following days of negotiations. The negotiators and NGOs emphasized that the fund was a significant achievement. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres welcomed the decision to establish a loss and damage fund and to operationalize it in the coming period. In a statement, he said, COP27 has taken an important step towards climate justice and a much-needed political signal to rebuild broken trust. The UN Secretary General expressed hope that the promise of $100 million worth of climate finance for developing countries will make progress. India led from the front towards setting up of the loss and damage fund. At the closing plenary session, Environment Minister Bhupender Yadav said it was a historic COP where agreement has been secured for loss and damage funding arrangements, including setting up a loss and damage fund. He welcomed the inclusion of transition to sustainable lifestyles and sustainable patterns of consumption and production to address climate change. India, along with G77, least developed countries and small island nations, had mooted the idea to have such a financing facility to deal with situations like relocating people displaced by floods. The vulnerable countries had said they won't leave COP27 without a loss and damage finance facility. It would be worthwhile to note that developed nations were opposed to the new fund amidst fears that it would hold them legally liable for massive damages caused by climate change. Indeed, it is a welcome move. However, it remains to be seen who will pay for it, since a lot of groundwork needs to be done in terms of defining what amounts to damages, how to quantify the losses, and the mechanisms to pay for it. The Transitional Committee, which will look into the identification and expansion of financial resources, had its task cut out. Although the interpretation is subject to scrutiny, it makes clear that those responsible will have to pay up for the damages that they cause. They will be held accountable to the people who are bearing the brunt of floods, cyclones, rising seas, and so on. On the flip side, COP27 had little to talk about emissions when it was expected that global warming would be at the center stage. Environment activists have expressed disappointment at no progress on curbing emissions. The other aspect which has drawn attention is singling out coal power. A reference was made by India and basic countries on phasing down of all fossil fuels. But the final deal mentioned that all countries should take steps towards phase down of unabated coal power and phase out of inefficient fossil fuel subsidies in line with the COP26 at Glasgow. For the global south and the developing world, this would be a major challenge to cope up with rich nations which continue to exploit the energy resources at their whims and fancies. The renewables are no doubt an option, but the cost of technology itself and the transfer of technology to the developing nations at an affordable cost is yet to fructify, hampering the global goal.
This is All India Radio giving you the world news. For quick news updates round the clock, follow us on Twitter at AIR News Alerts.
In Indonesia, the death toll has risen to 268 in the earthquake which occurred on Monday afternoon at the main island of Java. Officials said that more than 1,000 people were injured. The National Disaster Mitigation Agency said that 151 people are still missing. It also said that 22,000 houses had been damaged in the region. U.S. Geological Survey data said the 5.6 magnitude quake struck Cianjur town in West Java at a shallow depth of 10 km. The area where the quake struck is densely populated and prone to landslides. Rescuers have been working to try to save others who might still be trapped under collapsed buildings. An earthquake of 7.0 magnitude struck the Solomon Islands on Tuesday. No injuries or deaths have been reported yet. The quake was followed by at least 3 aftershocks, with the largest ranked at 6.0 magnitude. The director of the Solomon Islands Meteorological Service, David Hiriasia, has urged people to remain cautious due to expected aftershocks and to stay alert around tall structures.
The second round of Foreign Office consultations between India and Uganda were held in New Delhi on Tuesday. Both sides reviewed the entire spectrum of bilateral relations. Discussions were also held on furthering bilateral cooperation in specific sectors such as forensic sciences, health, renewable energy, agro-processing and medium and small enterprises. Both sides also exchanged views on regional and multilateral issues, including cooperation in UN, International Solar Alliance, East Africa Community, Common Market for Eastern and Southern Africa, and African Continental Free Trade Area. The Indian side reiterated their invitation for Uganda to join the Coalition for Disaster-Resilient Infrastructure. Both sides expressed happiness on the bilateral trade, which touched $840 billion for 2021-22. They discussed ways and means to further increase this trade. The Indian side congratulated Uganda for their forthcoming chairship of the non-alignment movement that starting in 2023. Discussions were also held on the 4th edition of India-Africa Forum Summit, proposed to be held next year. India has condemned the recent ballistic missile launches by North Korea at the United Nations Security Council, calling it a threat to the peace and security of the region and beyond. India's permanent representative to the UN, Ambassador Ruchira Kamboj, said India condemns the recent ICBM launch by the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, DPRK. She said this follows other ballistic missile launches in the preceding month, following which the Security Council had met. Ms. Kamboj said these launches constitute a violation of resolutions of the Security Council relating to the DPRK, adding that they affect the peace and security of the region and beyond. South Korea military said North Korea fired an intercontinental ballistic missile towards the East Sea last Friday. DPRK leader Kim Jong-un attended the site with his daughter and wife. The Jerusalem Post quoted him saying, "Threats from the US and its allies pursuing a hostile policy prompted North Korea to substantially accelerate the bolstering of its overwhelming nuclear deterrence."
The European Union, EU, has warned that violence could erupt in Kosovo after EU-mediated talks failed to resolve a dispute over Serbian car number plates. EU Foreign Policy Chief Josep Borrell said many hours of talks had failed to resolve the long-running dispute. Kosovo has a Serbian minority population. The Kosovan authorities want the Serb minority to surrender their Serbian-issued plates. They argue that license plates predating the country's 1999 war for independence from Serbia can no longer be valid. The Serbian minority in Kosovo is against this move. However, Kosovo has said that it will begin issuing fines from on Tuesday to the holders of Serbian-issued car number plates. Meanwhile, over 3,000 NATO peacekeeping troops remain deployed in Kosovo to prevent any violence. At least 38 people were killed and 2 got injured in a fire accident at a factory in Anyang city of central China. Chinese state media on Tuesday said that a fire accident was reported on Monday evening at a company dealing with chemicals and other industrial goods. It said that the fire was put out in 4 hours. Police said that suspects had been taken into custody in connection with the fire, but the cause remains unclear. China has seen a spate of industrial accidents in recent years that have left scores dead, raising concerns about public safety. Industrial accidents are common in China due to weak safety standards and corruption among officials responsible for enforcing them.
Chinese capital Beijing reported a record high of over 1,400 new COVID cases on Tuesday. Authorities have imposed a city-wide lockdown. Beijing has seen a continuous rise in new cases recently since Sunday. Mainland China recorded more than 28,000 new infections, nearing the record high since the pandemic began. China recently tweaked coronavirus measures to limit the economic and social impact of zero COVID measures. Bangladesh Foreign Minister Dr. A.K. Abdul Momen has said that the people of the Northeast India occupy a special place in the hearts of Bangladeshis for their unstinting support during the War of Liberation in 1971. He said this during a meeting with the delegation led by the Speaker of the Assam Legislative Assembly, Bishwajit Daimari, in Dhaka on Monday. The 55-member delegation, including 32 MLAs from Assam, is undertaking a 3-day official visit to Bangladesh beginning the 19th of this month.
Pakistan government has ordered an immediate investigation of confidential tax documents leakage related to the country's Chief of Army Staff General Qamar Javed Bajwa's family members. The move came a day after an online investigative news portal published a story about the accumulation of wealth worth nearly $56 million by family members of Bajwa during his extended 6-year term in the office. Finance Minister Mohammad Ashakdar's office said that it had taken serious note of the leak and called it a violation of the tax law and a breach of official confidential data. The Sensex and the Nifty on Tuesday witnessed gains of around 0.5%. Both stock indices rose amid mixed cues from global share markets. The Sensex closed above 61,400 points, while the Nifty settled nearly 18,250 level. A report from the business desk.
Sensex climbed 274 points or 0.45% to finish at 61,419. Nifty also appreciated by 84 points or 0.46% to end at 18,244. At the global stock markets, Asian stocks traded mixed. Japan's Nikkei 225 gained 0.6%, Singapore Straits Times rose 0.3%, and China's Shanghai Composite Index added marginally 0.1%. On the other hand, Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index declined 1.3% and South Korea's Kospi fell 0.6%. European shares were up in intraday trade. Oil rose after top exporter Saudi Arabia said OPEC Plus was sticking with output cuts and could take further steps to balance the market. It outweighed global recession worries and concern about China's rising COVID-19 case numbers. Crude prices gained around 1.5%. In intraday trade, Brent crude was trading at $88.70 per barrel. Back home in the foreign exchange market, the rupee strengthened by 18 paise against the US dollar. The domestic currency closed at 81 rupees and 67 paise against the American unit. Arjun Chowdhury for World News, All India Radio.
And now news from the sports desk.
In cricket, India clinched the 3-match T20 series against New Zealand 1-0 after the third and final match at McLean Park in Napier ended in a tie via Duckworth-Lewis method following rain interruption on Tuesday. Chasing the target of 161 runs, India was 75 for 4 in 9 overs when rain stopped the play. With incessant rain lashing the venue, the match could not be resumed. Since India were at par with the DLS score when rain stopped the play, the match was declared a tie. Mohammad Siraj was named player of the match for his exceptional bowling display. India won the second T20 international by 65 runs. The first match of the series was washed out without a ball being bowled. In football, Saudi Arabia stunned South American giant Argentina 2-1 in its opening game of the FIFA World Cup at the Lusail Stadium in Qatar. For Argentina, Lionel Messi opened the scoring inside 10 minutes from the penalty spot after VAR intervention. But Saudi Arabia bounced back in the second half with 2 goals inside the space of 5 minutes from Saleh Al-Shehri and Salem Al-Dawsari. Earlier, the match between United States and Wales in Group B ended in a 1-all draw at the Al Rayyan Stadium. This is Ramya for World News from Sports Desk.
Government of India's premier publishing house, Publication Division has brought its literary treasure to the International Film Festival of India, IFFI, in Goa. It is exhibiting its collection of books and journals at the Film Bazaar. More details from our correspondent.
Publication Division is exhibiting its collection of books on history of India's freedom struggle and freedom fighters. The cine lovers will also get a chance to explore the publication division's books on Indian cinema, art and culture, eminent personalities and the children's literature. It is also showcasing its books on Rashtrapati Bhavan and Prime Minister's speeches. Another highlight of the exhibition is its newly launched Azadi Quest Games. These games are entertaining and informational, enlightening the people about India's freedom movement and contributions of freedom fighters. Ashok Shukla, AIR News, Goa.
And now let us take a look at the major developments around the world as reported in the foreign press. The Financial Times reports that China lockdowns reach record level as coronavirus cases soar. The Wall Street Journal reports that senators urge Biden administration to provide Ukraine with armed drones. The Globe and Mail reports Iran situation critical with more than 300 killed, UN rights chief says. The Washington Post writes that the Netherlands has used advances in vertical farming, seed technology and robotics to become the world's second largest agriculture exporter. Japan Times reports that the U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris has become the highest-ranking American official to set foot on an island on the edge of the disputed South China Sea. South China Morning Post says Chinese U.S. defense chiefs agree to improve dialogue but stand firm on Taiwan. The Guardian writes that South African court paroles killer of anti-apartheid leader Chris Hani. And now, a quick look at the headlines once again. Prime Minister Narendra Modi says India has potential to become a manufacturing hub of the world. India-Australia Economic Cooperation and Trade Agreement passed by the Australian Parliament. Prime Minister Modi says it will strengthen comprehensive strategic partnership. Indian Defence Minister Rajnath Singh co-chairs maiden India-ASEAN Defence Ministers meeting in Cambodia. In Indonesia, death toll rises to 268 in Monday's earthquake at the main island of Java. In cricket, India win 3-match T20 series against New Zealand 1-0 after the rain-interrupted final game ends in tie. And in FIFA World Cup in Qatar, Saudi Arabia stuns Argentina 2-1 in historic upset in their opening game. And now, before we end, let us listen to Mahatma Gandhi's favorite bhajan, Vaishnava Jan, by artists from Lebanon. And with that, we end this bulletin. We'll be back at the same time tomorrow with the next edition of World News.